Hello, everyone. Welcome to my semi-regular show now, Speaking Moistly. With me, as almost usual, Mr. John Carpay. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Things are bonkers. It feels like we're riding a roller coaster a little bit. Like, there's news stories coming out of Nova Scotia, news stories coming out across Canada about censorship and people not being allowed to gather to worship, but terrorists being allowed to worship, which I think is just absolutely bonkers. And you and I were talking in the green room, and we're going to start with this because it's crazy. Not crazy, but it's one of those things that I'm very passionate about, and I find it difficult to find a pathway to fight back. And I feel like people want to know how they can fight back because it feels very hopeless at this point in time. So I took a picture of a sign in a bathroom in an Ontario high school, and it said, "This is a girls' bathroom," or people who identify as gender variant. And gender variant's not really well defined, I guess. And so anybody who identifies that way can use this bathroom. And I sent messages into Doug Ford, and for the last 3 education ministers, I've tried to get a meeting about this gender ideology, because Doug Ford was elected saying that he was going to remove the gender ideology, but has not done that, has doubled down. And in fact, it kind of enshrined it in law. And so allowing males who identify as female, encouraging them to use the bathroom, I thought surely these people would do something. They're actually doing something about some of the abuse in the Toronto School Board. So I thought maybe they'd do something here. And instead, they just sent me a form letter that basically said, gender ideology is the name of the game. Get on board or get run over. Like that's it. I've posted it if people are interested in reading that. But and I said, how do you fight this? Do you go up against the school board in court? Do you sue the government? How do you do this in a legal way? Because it doesn't look like they're really going to respond to me in a serious way. And your response kind of surprised me. And you said fight back politically. So like, how would you, let's tell the audience, how would you fight that if you could?
Well, you have to speak to them in the language that they understand, which is neither French nor English, but the language of votes. Most politicians are followers, not leaders, and so they are comfortably entrenched. They're surrounded by bureaucrats who are, very educational institutions, the universities, blah blah blah. This woke gender ideology, transgender ideology that a boy can become a woman and that a girl can become a man and so on. It is entrenched in the federal, provincial, municipal bureaucracies. It's entrenched in the school board bureaucracy, which exercises a lot of power. You can get changes if you have strong-minded elected trustees who put their foot down and insist on change, but otherwise it's the bureaucracy often sets the agenda. This transgender ideology has infiltrated unions. So unions have a lot of money and a lot of power and a lot of influence over politics. It has infiltrated the legal establishment. I'm told by some of our lawyers that judges will announce their personal pronouns in court or ask that lawyers do so. So you've got this ideology.
Would you be held in, would you be held in contempt of court if you refused? If a lawyer said, or if the judge said, Mark, you need to declare your pronouns, and I said, no, I'm not gonna do that. Would they say, like, boom, you're done?
It would depend on the judge. I'm not aware of how many lawyers are protesting against it, or if the lawyer has, what has been the judge's response, etc. That I don't know. But I'm just making the point that this ideology has infiltrated everything, everywhere.
Wow.
Right? So it's the judiciary, it's the law societies. You get I've had emails from law societies, and they've got the pronoun, he, him, she, her. Any organization that does that, they've completely bought into this transgender ideology that gender depends on identification rather than biology. So what do you do? On the local level, on the school board level, you have to replace, and this will be federally, provincially, municipally, school board, the citizens, 90% of us, or 80 or 70%,
a strong majority.
Basic reality, very strong majority. So we have to throw our weight around in the political arena. So for school board, I know you ran for school board. and I've known other good people that have run for school board. And it's incredibly difficult, but it's not impossible. It's not good enough to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 good people run for school board once every 3, 4 years, whatever the cycle is in the province that you live in. You have to build up an organization in your town, your city, your municipality, your district, whatever. And you set up a website and you say, concerned parents, parents protecting children, or concerned parents for truth, or whatever. You set up a website, you set up a bank account, you take donations, you create flyers and pamphlets and brochures. And what you do over a 3-year period prior to the election is you create a list of citizens who are interested in protecting children from transgender ideology. And when you have your list of names and addresses and emails and phone numbers, and the bigger the list, the better. Now you're in a good position to win an election. But without that legwork in that 3-year period between elections, it's very hard to be up against union-funded candidates that are, committed to this garbage.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it's really hard. Like, I ran for school board, as you mentioned, and it's very difficult to get people interested in it if they're not parents. And if they're kids, 18 to 25 type deal, who are very focused on their own education to get out into the world and so on, they don't view that as their job. And the kids and the people who do are not already in the fight. Certainly, I don't think there's a very good vehicle yet to agree with you somewhat. But on the flip side, I've been watching the space of talking about this transgender issue, and I've seen people like Billboard Chris, who we just talked about, get arrested in Australia for holding a billboard, like a sandwich sign, that says, fathers don't expose their daughters to gender ideology, and fathers don't allow this. And so what they're trying to do is almost criminalize. They've certainly made it a hot topic to discuss biology, right? To say like that men can't be women or so on and so forth. And if you take a strong stance publicly, then in Canada, they wanted to have the online harms bill, which would potentially saddle me with, if I said that man can't be a woman, and a male who believed that he was a woman took offense, that person could sue me for $70,000. 20 of that would go to the government and 50 would go to that person. All you'd need to do, to mention, what's his face, Jessica Simpson, Yanav, right? All you would need to do is win a couple of cases and you've got an income for a while. And so I feel like there are people who, and what happened to the Give, Send, Go list, the people who supported the truckers, if I've got a list, some hacker's looking to get my list and release it, and the government of Canada is going to freeze those bank accounts maybe, right? And so I understand what you're saying. And I mean, I've tried, man, I've run up that hill a couple of times, and that's not even touching on how prolific the unions and other interested parties who get their paycheck from the government are putting their finger on the scale of some of those elections as well. They have their preferred candidate, and all of a sudden, like 70% of their preferred candidates get elected. And so, man, it's not blaming you or anything like that. I'm just saying the circumstances. If I was a betting man, I would say this is
everything you're saying. Everything you're saying is that it's a very uphill fight, which I just said at the beginning. It's an uphill fight. It's a thankless task, but it can be done if citizens go door to door, knock on doors, talk to people. You're going to find out very quickly. You're going to find out voters, right? Because whether you're a parent or not, you can vote. A huge amount of effort that it would take, but if you go door to door with pamphlets and flyers and talk to people. And in your, city or the district of the city, right? I mean, some cities have districts with this school board trustee for each district. Others, it's citywide. But whatever, you have to build up that voters list. In terms of people getting in trouble for stating that there's only two genders, and a man cannot become a woman cannot become a man, etc. There are efforts, the law societies, we're representing Amy Ham in British Columbia, who's a nurse who's been found guilty of professional misconduct or unprofessional conduct or professional misconduct, whichever, by the BC College of Nurses and Midwives, have found Amy Ham guilty of that because she said publicly that there's only two genders.
Unbelievable.
The biggest problem there, I mean, this college, they should be ashamed of themselves for repudiating science and undermining free speech. But, if there had been 5,000 nurses in BC, or even 1,000 nurses in BC, who have gone on Twitter and said, we support Amy Ham, they don't even have to go so far as to say there's only two genders. But the college can't go after 1,000 people, 1,000 nurses in British Columbia who are all going on Twitter saying, I am a registered nurse in British Columbia. I know my science, and there are only two genders.
Yeah.
Women deserve safe spaces like bathrooms, change rooms. If you get 1,000 nurses or even 100 nurses in British Columbia doing that, the college can't possibly prosecute them all.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you can still exercise, you can make the point about there being only two genders, and just don't get into personal attacks against somebody like Jessica Simpson, Jonathan Yaniv. Stay clear of the individual. Mm-hmm. And it is actually pretty hard for the government to prosecute anybody just for asserting that there's only two genders and that women deserve safe spaces.
Interesting. Yeah, no, well, that makes me feel a little bit better as I do my show and often cite that you just can't randomly do that. Change genders, change your sex. That is what it is. And when I was reading the online harms bill, I was certainly concerned that, people might target. Apparently, they were leaving it so that anything on the internet, even years old videos that happened before there was the law about this, would still be subject because it's on the internet. So I was honestly concerned about it. So fingers crossed. But speaking of the ongoing tyranny in our country, what do you think about, and I know that the Justice Center has responded to what's going on in Nova Scotia. What do you think about that? What's the short term? What's the medium term? Is this an attack on our freedoms, or is this prudent fire management? What do you think?
Oh, I mean, the Premier of Nova Scotia announced that people in Nova Scotia cannot go out into the woods, and we have to do this to fight fires. I mean, it is so outrageous. It is utterly detached from reality. You could pass a regulation saying no campfires. I'm sure that's already been in place for a long time. Whenever there's a high fire hazard, in Alberta where I live, there's ads on the radio. Government of Alberta reminds you that campfires are illegal. Yep. That's a rational connection where you say, well, there's a connection between not having a campfire and preventing a forest fire.
Yep.
They could ban the government could say that it's illegal to smoke a cigarette or a joint or a cigar or a pipe. No smoking of any kind.
Yep.
In the woods. You can only smoke, inside the city, maybe your own house, your own backyard, but there's a smoking ban. There's a campfire ban. There could be a fireworks ban. I don't know too much about fireworks, but I assume that they would be a fire hazard.
Yep.
Those are rational tools. But to say that people can't enjoy the woods, it's like the lockdown, measures, right? Where people got ticketed for. The Justice Center provided a lawyer for a young man in Ottawa who was 17. He was playing basketball alone outside. There was a hoop in, I don't know if it was his driveway or a public park. I think it was a public park. Mm-hmm. And there's a basketball hoop. And he's by himself outside, gets a $700 ticket.
Unbelievable.
This is and that Premier is a power-hungry authoritarian tyrant who, I mean, I can only surmise, seeing the absence of logic, I have to ask the question, is this just a thirst for power that you enjoy taking away people's rights because you find that some, psychological pleasure that you're getting out of that? I have to ask the question when there's something that's so utterly detached from reality.
Yeah, well, it seems so strange. I mean, after COVID, people are concerned with these edicts from on high, I think more than we would have been otherwise. I think there was Lion Advocacy was talking about how this had happened in 2001 and 2016. And I don't think that it had such an outcry back then. And then since they did it again in 2023, and I don't remember hearing about it as much. But I don't know that one of the parts of this, two of the parts, one is $25,000 fines, and I don't know if that was the case last time. And I don't know if they they've said this time that it's until October, which seems very blanket. Like this is like not citing this fire as an emergency right now in this forest or something like that. You can't go in here because there's a fire. That might make sense. Uh-oh, we've lost it. I knew. Go. Oh, haha. Yeah, so we were just talking, and sorry, there was an internet blip, but sorry, just to gather my thoughts, we were talking about how the removal of rights is some kind of exciting thing for these premiers, and I was talking about how it's a very, very concerning echo to COVID, and people aren't tolerating it as much this time around, and the removal of rights without any kind of rational connection, and it was the length until October. They've extended things to October, and it doesn't seem like they're responding to a specific thread. It seems like they're responding to like make a season of this rather than we're responding to this specific disaster, and we're real sorry. When the disaster is done, of course you can have your rights, but it doesn't make sense to go into this burning forest. That's not this. And they're saying till October there's a risk. There's always a risk. There's always a risk of something, right? And so it feels very tyrannical in a way that maybe historically it never felt before. And that's concerning to me because, man, I don't trust that the government's acting in our best interest, even though they say they're acting in our best interest. It seems like, man, I remember very recently you taking away our rights and that not being beneficial for us all. You know what I mean?
Well, they're being mocked and ridiculed on the internet. The Justice Center retweeted a brilliant video, 2.5 minutes, by a Nova Scotia person who was out with his dog and said, this is the woods. Yep. And so we can't go in because there's a yellow police tape. This is not the woods. Yep. And they get into the stupidity like these COVID rules where you could take off your mask. You're seated in a restaurant and you could take off your mask while you're eating but that's okay. Right. But then if you stand up and walk across the restaurant to go use the bathroom, you got to put the mask back on. And it's all the same air that we're breathing. And the whole thing was based on the wild exaggerations of Neil Ferguson from Imperial College, who said that it would be as bad as the Spanish flu of 1918, which it wasn't. Mm-hmm. But in a democracy, politicians are followers, not leaders. And I think if this Nova Scotia premier cares about his own, political prospects, then if the citizens are pushing back, then.
Yeah. So when you say they're followers, not leaders, who are they? I have been very critical of our government, and I feel strongly that they're not working for us in the sense that we think they're working for us. We think we elect them and we pay them, so they work for us. But I look at their behavior, and they're not afraid of us. You know how if you work for somebody and you're doing something that you're not supposed to do, and then that person you work for comes in, you're like, oh, you're here. I'll certainly get back to work on that spreadsheet, and I'm not surfing Reddit or whatever, right? And so they don't respond like that to me or to like groups of citizens at all. Sometimes they respond like that to religious groups, like blocks of religious groups, and you could name a whole bunch of them. But it doesn't seem like they're responding to the electorate at large. They're responding to very, very small people who they can pander to. And that's very frustrating from a trying to hold them accountable point of view.
Well, it needs to take on a critical mass. Okay, there have been instances. We saw a change in Alberta where people were so fed up with Jason Kenney's lockdowns, as well as this flip-flopping.
Yes.
One day he sounded like John Carpay in the Justice Center and was saying that lockdowns were causing a lot of harm, and then the next day it was we're gonna lock you down again. So people took out a membership in the United Conservative Party, and when Jason Kenney received only 52% or 51% in the leadership vote, his only option really practically was to resign as UCP leader, which he did. So he was forced out, and he ended up being replaced by Danielle Smith, who was a lot more freedom-minded than what Jason Kenney was, and a lot more in tune with the science and with reality than what Jason Kenney was. So it's like exercise. Okay, if you want to, let's say you're in terrible shape, you're drinking a lot of alcohol, you're smoking, you're a couch potato, you get zero exercise. Okay, you're not going to turn your life around by doing one sit-up. right? It's got to be a whole bunch of things. You're going to cut down on your drinking, maybe quit smoking, start eating right, start eating less, start exercising. You got to really turn, if you want a better body and a longer life, you have to do a lot. So it's like that with democracy. It's not good enough just you send one email to your MPP or your MP and then you expect the whole world to change. No, there is a critical mass component. And there's lots of examples where there's this public backlash. We had it just recently in British Columbia. I forget, it's 2, 3, 4 months ago, where the cabinet appropriated huge powers for itself. A lot of people spoke out from across the political spectrum. It wasn't just groups like the Justice Center, but it was a very broad-based saying, "Whoa, you want to grab all this power so that the cabinet can make all these decisions without being held to accountable by the legislature," and they backed away from it. Large public outcry.
Yeah.
In Nova Scotia, if there's enough people phoning and emailing their local representative provincially, I don't know if they're called member of the Legislative Assembly. I don't know what the title is.
Yeah.
The Nova Scotia people, if they contact their local reps, you're going to see a change there.
Yeah. I have mixed results with contacting the local reps, but I'm the one who's doing the push-ups or the sit-ups or whatever. I'm the one who does those things, and then I don't get anywhere. And I tell other people, like, look, all the things that I tried to do and failed, and they're like, oh man, it sucks that you failed, and then it doesn't go. And so I'm not great at organizing, I guess. I just like to do my show, but it is frustrating, and it's hard because there's not really a vehicle to put your hope behind. In 2018, Doug Ford came into power saying that he was going to get the SOGI stuff out of Ontario schools, and he doubled down on Black brilliance and the SOGI. It's not SOGI here; it's just gender ideology here, but it's the same thing. And he doubled down on it and made it into law. And so I don't see anybody. And there are some smaller parties. Alberta's a good example of smaller parties like Wild Rose and then UCP becoming the big one, but in Ontario, it's like we don't vote for anything but Liberal and PC. The smaller parties are really, honestly, not on the register, and I don't see any vehicles for people to vote for, and it's just very difficult.
You can get in a provincial riding, which I understand is the same boundaries as the federal riding, anyways, right? Yeah. So in a I'm turning 58 this month. I call them ridings because that's what I grew up with. But electoral district, okay? Right. In your electoral district, if somebody, the political parties have their own miniature election, their own primaries. Primaries is what they're called in the U.S. But for the Ontario PCs to choose their candidate, they first have their own election in which Conservative Party members vote, and anybody can pay their $10 or whatever it is and join. So somebody, I know Randy Hillier, okay, he was an example. He went after a PC nomination. He signed up, I don't know how many people, this is, 10, 15, no, it was more than 15 years ago. It was between 15 and 20 years ago. Randy Hillier signed up, X number of people, maybe 500, maybe 1,000, maybe it was only 200. He gets these people to take out a membership in the PC party. The PC party has their nomination race, and he wins, and he becomes the PC candidate. So then he's part of the government or part of the party, and maybe they were in opposition when he was first elected. Did he have an influence? Absolutely. Did he get treated poorly? Yes, he got kicked out of caucus. They were upset with him. They ostracized him. Whatever. He's gone through rough times. But like you asked the question, what can people do? You get that happening all over Ontario. You get people that you run for the local PC nomination or for the local Liberal nomination for that matter. And with 500 people, you get, that's how you become an MPP. So the door is open to people to do something. If you're local, you can do it this way. You contact your MPP, whatever party. You say, like, if you're not going to stand up for kids, and if you're not going to protect children from harmful transgender ideology, we're going to remove you from office. And then you do the hard work, and you find 500 people that live in that electoral district to take out the party membership, Liberal or Conservative or whatever, and you go after and you knock them out at the nomination stage.
Yeah, it's a good plan. It's something. I'm just, man,
it takes a lot of hard work, and it's hard. It's a shift because most of us, we've been trusting, for certainly prior to 2020, most people are trusting their elected representatives that, they've got our best interests at heart and they're not going to harm us. And, it doesn't really matter who wins because they're all good people and they're all going to do the best they can.
Yeah.
And, so we're not used to taking out a membership in a political party and participating in a nomination race. We're not used to that.
Yeah.
We're not used to having to build up local citizens groups to win a school board election.
Yep.
So we got to have this radical shift in our thinking.
Canadians are very non-confrontational sometimes. It's a very non-confrontational, they want to solve the problem without making anybody upset. And I don't mind making people upset, but it frustrates me when it yields no results. Let's change gears just a little bit. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sure. No, that's fine.
I was just
sometimes, look, short-term, minimal effort, short-term don't produce results. But this is a bigger battle. It's analogous. Let's say you're having huge marriage problems and you're on the verge of separation. Okay, there's no quick fix. There's no easy answer. Mm-hmm. Both spouses have to be willing to work at it and change their thinking, change their attitude, change their behavior. It's not like a light switch, bad marriage, good marriage. You just flick it on. It's not like that. It takes work.
Yeah.
So it's the same with politics and democracy.
Yeah, it seems like the work has been done to make things worse in Canada, not better. It seems like the work has been done in the last 25 years to water down the law, to make things unsafe, and to create a situation where people who are just trying to work and get by get their production stolen for people who just want to sit in a hotel and eat free food all day, right? It's just weird. It's just a weird inversion of how...
All the more reason to fight back.
Yeah, well, I'd love to fight back. I just like to fight effectively, and it seems like all of the choices that I've made have been very ineffective as far as yielding results. Let's talk about Sean and more safetyism, because we were talking about safetyism at the school board, right? And so Sean F., and I always get his I'm bad at saying last names, so I stay away from that. But he's the Catholic or the Christian prayer leader who leads worships all across multiple countries. He's been around the world. He's done it in Africa. He's done it in the United States. He lives in the United States, and he's come across Canada. He's gone in other places as well. And all of a sudden, every single government across Canada has said this is a safety concern. And as I understand it, the safety concern is the people protesting him would become so outlandish as to become unsafe. Is that a correct assessment of what's going on? Or are they just being vague about the safety, and they're implying that somehow worshiping God in a church is unsafe?
Well, some of the cancellations, the government spokespeople have been quite candid, saying that Sean Feucht's message does not align with our values. We believe in respect and tolerance and equity, diversity, inclusion, and Sean Feucht is against that. And so we are going to cancel him because, I guess their conception of the free society is that, only people who agree with them are allowed to speak in public. I mean, It boils down to free speech for me, but not for thee, because my views are acceptable and your views are not. So I'm going to silence you. They have tried to raise safety, and I've seen this myself. I've defended free speech rights for pro-life students at universities for a long time, because they were always getting targeted, picked on for censorship because their message is unpopular. It's a minority viewpoint. And what the university has done is, and what they still try to do is, they say, well, we're for free speech, 100%. You can say whatever you want. But, there's a safety concern because there's these counter-protesters, and they might get violent. So you going on campus with your unpopular opinion, you're causing this violence or potential violence. So we have to censor you. Or, as in one of our court cases against the University of Alberta, which we won, the University of Alberta wanted to extract a $17,500 security fee from this little campus pro-life group, and said, we believe in campus free speech. You do whatever you want. Just pay us $17,500. Now, the problem with this safety and security rationale is that it blames the victim. It's analogous to saying, if a woman is sexually assaulted, well, what was she wearing? Was she behaving provocatively? Was she wearing a miniskirt? It's like, no, 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 wrong, wrong, wrong. You don't blame the woman, you blame the perpetrator, okay? And what these university presidents do is they blame the group with the unpopular opinion. Used to be just pro-life groups, now it's all kinds of groups.
Yep.
You blame the group with the unpopular opinion, and you say, well, you're causing a safety concern because these other people, they might get violent, so we're going to censor you. And it's so wicked and perverse, and it's twisted, and it's dishonest.
Yeah.
Because the security risk comes from the people who are becoming violent, or they're engaging in pushing and shoving, physical contact, or they're threatening to do that. They're the problem.
Yep.
They're the ones the university should go after and say, oh, you know what? We're going to invoice you $17,500 to provide this additional security. And anyway, so some of this rationale is creeping into these cities and where they're banning Sean Feucht. They have raised this security concern, but they've also said quite publicly that they disagree with his message.
Yes. Yeah, I noticed that with Montreal. I think it was Montreal and Quebec City as well, saying that the church in Montreal specifically couldn't. Well, he got a fine for that, and you guys are helping with some of that legal work. Is that accurate or no?
Yes. Yeah. So the lawyers in the Justice Centers network have been and are working with the organization that is organizing the tour. So we don't have a lot of contact with Sean Feucht directly,
okay,
but we are providing the legal the lawyers to help the organizing committee. So most recently, we have issued a demand letter to the city of Abbotsford, basically telling them that they need to reverse their decision on prohibiting Sean Feucht from using public. I don't know if it was a park or what. I have to reread the letter, but basically telling the city of Abbotsford they have to reverse their decision or they'll face court action.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, that's not, so that date wasn't until the 24th of August. So today's the 7th, just for anybody watching. But it seems like almost a game of chicken. And to watch all of the other performances, I think like all 6 original performances were canceled, and then he's got other alternatives, but they're threatening all sorts of fines. And so Nova Scotia said that they'd have $50,000 in fines if more than 200 people showed up to a private field that a farmer owned that said, yeah, you can use my field if you want, stick up a stage and have your worship there. If more than 200 people show up, it's a $50,000 fine. So it's right exactly what you're talking about. And it is victim blaming. And it leads me in the direction of, well, during COVID, I got a $47 million bill from the public health because I asked them for all of I wanted the emails for the consultations for forcing masking on school children. And they said, oh yeah, we've got that. But you have to give me $7 million. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, I'll get right on that. And I was like, you're kidding, right? But,
sorry, they wanted $47 million to give you those emails?
No word of a lie, sir. I have the documents just for fun. Like I've kept them because I was like, this is ridiculous. Like I've got a $47 million bill, like a legit one. Like that's pretty great. So, but yeah. Well,
fortunately, the CDC smear campaign against Sean Feucht, it's very interesting. If there was an American Christian singer who was doing a tour in Canada, and if that singer had at various times made political comments that aligned with the Democrats in the U.S., and if that American Christian singer had once upon a time run for Congress or tried to run for Congress as a Democrat, and if that American Christian singer had, left-wing opinions about whatever immigration or what have you, if that singer was touring Canada, but if they're a worship leader and they're a Christian singer and, doing praise and worship and singing Christian songs, the CDC would simply refer that person they're an American singer. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't bother saying, and they once ran for the Democrats and, they've got some of the left-wing political opinions.
Yep.
here you get Sean Feucht, who primarily, first and foremost, when he goes to a city, he leads praise and worship and prayer. He's a Christian singer. Now, he has also, publicly stated his opinions on issues, and so he, it was pro-Trump and against abortion and against transgender ideology, et cetera, et cetera. So he's got these political views. Now, what's really interesting, the CBC says, they call him MAGA singer, Make America Great Again.
Yep.
MAGA singer,
Yep.
or MAGA affiliated singer.
Yep.
MAGA isn't even an organization. I looked, is there such a thing as a MAGA organization? No, it's just a political slogan. So I don't know how you can be affiliated with a slogan that's not even a legal entity. There is no MAGA as a legal entity as such, but they call it a MAGA affiliated singer, MAGA singer. And the CBC makes it sound like this guy is going across Canada promoting Donald Trump, which, by the way, if he wanted to do that and hold pro-Trump rallies in Canada, he should be free to do that as well, by the way, just to be clear. But it's this generating hysteria through this, making it sound like this guy's running around Canada holding pro-Trump rallies when he's a Christian singer doing praise and worship.
Right. Well, and not just pro-Trump rallies, dangerous pro-Trump rallies that need to be canceled because they're so dangerous. Public safety concerns abide, right? And it's the messaging is a very concerning thing. And you're 100% right. It would never happen even look at Donald Trump. When he was a Democrat, he would hang out with Hillary Clinton. He would hang out with all of the Democrat darlings, everybody. He was on The Apprentice. He did Celebrity Apprentice. You know what I mean? Like, he was somebody who was loved. And then he came down the escalator in 2015. And more than loved, he donated to their campaigns. So they would call him and say, do you have $1 million for my campaign, sir? I'd love to have you for dinner. That kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden he's their competition and boom, everybody's supposed to hate him. So it's a very interesting juxtaposition. And one of the headwinds that I see if I decided, I'm going to do it, darn it, I'm going to become, the leader of the PC party in Ontario, and I'm going to take out Doug Ford and we're going to do it. Right. I feel like there would be headwinds that say, mega, right-wing political talking head is trying to become a leader of this political party, and that's dangerous. You know what I mean? And so they frame these things as negative. And I don't think that I'm a dangerous person pushing dangerous ideas.
The good news is there's fewer and fewer people, Canadians, are tuning into the CBC, and you've got the growth of alternative media like yourself, you're a form of media. In the broad sense, and you've got the Rebel and True North and Juno News, and you've got the Epoch Times, you've got the Western Standard, and there's more and more people listening to podcasts. So in some ways, we're in better shape than what we were in the 1980s, where the internet wasn't there, and if the CBC and CTV together and Global and the other networks, if they collectively decided to not give you coverage, right?
Yep.
They could very effectively make it very difficult for you to have your voice heard because they just wouldn't cover you. Now, the CBC will never, the Justice Center is the leading defender of constitutional freedoms in Canada. We're the leading defender of free speech in Canada, not the only one. So with the Sean Feucht, do you think the CBC asks the Justice Center about constitutional law? No. They go to somebody else, right? Yeah. We've been boycotted since 2020 when we were the only civil liberties group that spoke out, that called for an end to lockdowns. Other civil liberties groups, they had some qualms about some of the rules, but they didn't call for an end to lockdowns. They were fundamentally on board with the project. Yep. So we've been boycotted close to 100% by the CBC, and yet we've got thousands of Canadians that know about us, that donate money to us, and so there is hope for the future because the independent media are out and about. More and more Canadians are getting their news from independent media. Fewer and fewer people from the CBC and other government-funded media.
Yeah, well, thank goodness, and I hope that we're able to continue doing that through Yeah, I mean, just the headwinds that are approaching, because it seems like there's lots of censorship on the horizon. And I hope that I'm wrong about that. I hope we're able to, as you say, have a lot of pushback against anybody who tries to shut down that ability to communicate with each other. And I hope that the government listens to it. So one last thing, one last connection I want to make. We're just at the end of the show, but in Vancouver, there was a terrorist group, and they just declared this terrorist group a terrorist group recently, that Samadan, and they were allowed, no police or anything to show up. They were allowed to gather in a Vancouver park, and I just thought it was really interesting. All of the Palestinian protests, they all have police. All of everything that's going on around Ontario seems to have some kind of police presence, and indeed. In BC, they're citing safety concerns to not let Sean do his worship, yet they're allowing registered terrorist groups or identified terrorist groups meet in a park. And I just think it's such a strange thing to live through. And it's such a weird concept. And I hope that we're able to correct course. Just final thoughts on that, and then we'll have to say goodbye.
Well, the bad news is lots of blood, sweat, toil, and tears, lots of hard work that needs to be done to change our culture. It is sickening and disgusting when the law is not applied fairly or equally, and where it becomes politicized, where, if you're an American Christian singer who has conservative views, which, by the way, are shared by tens of millions of Americans as well as millions of Canadians,
yep.
Although it shouldn't matter, even if it was only 1% of the people who agreed with him,
yep.
There's still free speech. But you've got this, concern about this Christian singer who is not violent, who's not a terrorist. And then if the police are allowing supporters of a terrorist group to gather under that banner, that's a disgrace. And so the long-term solution to that, we radically need to transform our culture so we get back to Canadians having an appreciation for our fundamental rights and freedoms, and so we get back to the rule of law, where the law is applied equally to everybody, regardless of political opinion. So lots of hard work ahead of us to transform the culture, but we're going to win in the end.
I hope so. When people say rule of law, it has been watered down to almost a slogan now. And when I worked at Taco Bell years and years ago, and I'm no shade at Taco Bell, the meat would come in a box that said 100% real ground beef, but the first ingredient was taco filler. So that's what I feel about rule of law, right? Like it's the thing on the box, but man, we don't have it at all. It's like taco filler. That's the first ingredient. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, sir. And hopefully we can have you back again. And for everybody watching, thanks for watching, and we will catch you next time.